Welcome back to the Press Club, and thank you very much for staying tuned. For those of you who have invited us into your homes, we thank you once again. It is our pleasure to be here. We deem it a privilege to be in your homes with you, to just, enjoy your company for the next 90 minutes, not 90 minutes, 60 minutes or so. We have already taken like 10 minutes, so next 50 minutes. So, Jerry, let's go to your top story. A very troubling one, but also there's hope there with the polygraphs being implemented, or the police trying to put into their training or recruiting process polygraph tests.
Well, the thing is that polygraph tests are not new when one is seeking employment, but I suspect in protective services such as the police it is perhaps more needed. At least it gives an indication of persons who are entering the force, and if perhaps they have done anything that within the questionnaire that says they are unsuitable, at least it is caught before they actually are signed on as police officers. But the thing is that yes, we get the test, but it must be something that is continuous, as I said, and it's a polygraph test. There are other tests that need to be done in terms of ensuring that the right personalities are fit with the organizational culture and the organizational expectation of the Royal St. Lucia Police Force. And I do support that, and it would seem to me that it is something that is needed for all persons who are working in public service areas.
And in addition, I think the commissioner said that psychological testing will also be carried out. So that's a good move. I commended him for that. Talking about that, you also raised the issue of the police officer who assisted. I can't be as diplomatic as you, I'm sorry. So you'd have to put it in your own words.
Well, the story says that a police officer, they were looking or was on the hunt, or they arrested a police officer for helping a Jamaican national escape who later on turned himself in.
Yeah.
Wasn't that the story?
Yeah, that was the story. I think the police came back to say that he did not turn himself in. He was approached by a police officer in Leclerc. And, the police officer alerted the Major Crimes Unit and they came to pick him up. But then he was approached, he didn't just walk in.
So he surrendered willingly? Is something like that?
Something like that, but it's very disturbing, though.
Yeah, whenever, an issue like that, and, you call them rotten cops or rotten apples or rogue cops, etc., I think it always gives pause to the fact that there are men and women who put their line on and life on the line, not for St. Lucians, in terms of their day-to-day job. And when you have somebody who is on the inside, who should be supporting the efforts to ensure that the police is seen in the best possible light, it always is a disturbing occurrence. And that is why perhaps now you tie this in and you see that it is more than ever needed. I'm not saying that it's going to solve all the problems, but definitely we can pick up issues as to whether somebody is absolutely suitable. But I could well imagine the hue and cry within the police force itself that this is happening. But I'm also very happy that that the commissioner himself has taken a no-holds-barred kind of approach, that if anybody within his force is found to be of criminal intent and inclination, then he is going to use the full force of the law to sort of prosecute them. And I think that is something that is the public needs to hear. The public now believes, and I think his actions have shown that this is something that he is committed to.
Yeah, and there's no cover-up. And this story, though, there are a number of layers to it, I think, that needs to be considered. I'll go to the last one first. The fact that, a police officer in his capacity, working officially, sees the inducement as something that he can benefit from, whether it's $2,000 or however much that was given, it speaks to the level of the officers that we have. If officers are starting so low on the pay scale, that they can see $2,000 as an inducement to throw away their career, you know, potentially, because obviously I don't think that this individual thought that he would get caught, you know, with aiding and abetting.
But you know, Clinton, the thing is that my friend Gus Small always says everybody has a price.
Right.
And that, unfortunately, you say for you who make consultant fees of thousands of $1,000, a 2,000 inducement seems like a drop in the bucket.
You mean the volunteer kudos that I get, huh?
No, but I'm saying, but yes, you are absolutely right that you know, somebody can see, you know, a little bit of money, perhaps just a little above what he or she receives on a monthly basis, as a reason for sort of losing all that you've earned in the force before then. It speaks about caliber and character.
Right. Now, the other thing I want to point out is this gentleman, Norville Blaine Clark is his name, from Chazelle PC 710. He's the accused. We're not saying that he has not been charged. He has not been convicted. He has just been charged with aiding and abetting. That he has been in the force for 7 years. And he is still a police constable. This is the lowest rank in the police force. Now, it always raises a question to me that an individual who has been in any organization for a considerable amount of time has not advanced any. And in 7 years, that is enough time to advance. There are opportunities within the force where you can seek training. And I think that the force needs to look at that seriously as well. That, you know, you get a certain time frame in which to show some progression, some progress in the work that you do. Even if it's to get an associate's degree, a diploma in something, you know, a specialization in a particular area of policing, you know, something to say, okay, well, I have done a little bit more, and therefore I can move from a constable, where I came into the force, to something, you know, say a specialist, a corporal or something, you know, even though, and then, you know, as you go further up the ranks, then you give a little more time. So I was thinking, say, a police constable, if you have not advanced in 4 years, then you need to be reevaluated to see whether you are fit for the force. You know, if you're talking about from constable to sergeant, is it constable to sergeant? That's not constable, corporal to sergeant,
Corporal, yeah.
right? Probably 5 years, because there are fewer spots in that position. You know, the majority of the force is constables. You know, the lowest end.
Well, the other side of that is, apart from you taking the initiative, there's always the opportunity. I know, particularly in the New York police force, for example, that there are tests held regularly for persons who are seeking higher up positions, who have to study, you know, as to, you know, what is required for a particular position, sit the test, and together with this and their own personal evaluations, can see themselves moving up. So perhaps the evaluation system, you know, of human resources within the police force needs to be sort of more updated than it is, because one of the things that you hear from persons in the force is that, you know, it's not what you know, but it's who you know.
Right.
And that is something that is always very niggling in almost every company. But I think, you know, with an unbiased test, for example, being administered, that given a percentage of, you know, what is your expectation for promotion, then that can sort of erase the subjectivity or the preferential treatment that people claim exists.
Well, I agree that there is some of that to some extent, but you cannot tell me, Jerry, I mean, I know you, and myself as well. I cannot be in an organization. There are some police constables who tell me they have been in the force for 19 years, for 17 years. You know, how is it you came in at that level 17 years ago and you have made no advancement? So you tell me, along those 17 years, you know, people who have not, like you, have not left the force, and new people come in. The problem must be with you. The problem cannot be with everybody else. You know, you cannot tell me that everybody dislikes you so much that they will not see you as someone who can take on a more senior role or a leadership role within the force. So it has to be part of you. And if you're in a position where you feel that, you know, people don't like me, or, you know, it's who you know, other people are being catapulted over you, then you leave and you advance yourself. But then the fact that you stay there in that position suggests to me that you have not motivation, but you have no drive.
Desire,
Yeah, no
right.
desire to advance yourself.
That's
you know,
correct.
so
Yeah.
yeah. But
Then too, I mean, part of the evaluation is that, you know, for every stage there should be some sort of you know, a re-evaluation of personnel, just to make sure that, say, hey, you're not cutting it. You know, time for you to go. You
Right.
know, it's let's move you to make room for persons who have the drive, the desire, the education, the focus, as well as the objective outlook in terms of self-improvement and wanting to contribute to the progress of the force.
Well, the same thing with the Borderley Correctional Facility, because a correctional officer was arrested last week as well for smuggling contraband into the prisons. You know, and it's the same argument that I'll raise here.
Yes.
You know, there is no drive. You know, you see, we kind of get the lowest. You're looking for people with 5 CXCs. And in this day and age, when you have people getting 14 CXCs and 10 CXCs, if you're looking for 5 as the minimum requirement, and you know, almost anybody can get that.
Well, I think that 5 CXCs is the benchmark for
Right.
most, almost every opportunity that you have outside of your, you know, your secondary school classroom. But what needs to be done is some sort of system where you can capture a person's indication of their involvement, let's say, in the community life, you know, their participation in extracurricular activities. And then, of course, together with the polygraph test and the psychological test, these things can tell you much about people who need not be there, you know, in the first place. Even at your training school, there needs to be, you know, maybe a 5-week warning, you know, a 12-week. So if there are people who do not necessarily feel the how would I say, the culture of the police force, say, hey, you know, take your bags and walk.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about the benchmark, and 5-6 has been a benchmark for most other businesses. But remember, this is the force. This is the police force, where you're vesting in these men and women the ability to use deadly force against the citizenry. And to me, it should take a higher caliber of an individual to be vested in, you know, with that much power. You know, don't tell me that you get the average person and say, okay, all that power is put in your hands. You know, that's why I would love to see an elevation of the standard, the minimum requirement for police officers, so that, you know, we can get a better force, and, you know, people will not get induced by such pittance. And Jerry, you understand that because you're the one, you know.
Yes, I know about,
you know, just
earning $2,000.
raking in. You can't even carry it in your wallet, you know.
That's an untruth that has to be proven.
Over your shoulders and in a barrel.
I'm not Santa Claus.
Let's move on to the other story. Another one, the LPM, the Lucian People's Movement.
Okay, it's a party?
Well, from the last I heard, it's a get-together. Somebody was saying, you know, it's a bring your own booze, so you can't consider a party. I'm just kidding here, but they have made a valuable contribution in terms of elevating the level of debate, I must say. But then that statement they released, targeting Alex Bousquet and DBS last week, I think that was unprovoked, unwarranted, and the media should have stood firm and strong against such an attack, because not only did the LPM statement, and I saw the leader's name, Terrell Prudent, at the end of it, attack DBS and Alex Bousquet, it attacked the entire media. It said that the media in St. Lucia is biased and unprofessional. And of course, we as a media association would have taken exception to it. I personally took exception to it, because in everything that I do, I try to be professional. I try to put my best foot forward. I try to, you know, do what it takes, you know, looking at the international standards that go with journalism. And it also raises a question about a discussion which was on the Facebook page. Claudius Francis, the speaker, the president of the Senate, he raised a question, you know, whether journalism is a profession. And I have said that for a long time, that journalism is a profession. That's the reason why, you know, that's the reason, you know, we go out and we study that particular area. and not because someone has worked in the field for a while would make them necessarily journalists. You know, not because I give an analogy, you know, a physician's aide, not because that person has worked in a physician's office for a while, you know, that person is rendered a physician. That person may know a lot about what work the physician
Indeed.
does, but then as far as qualifications and what they call it, nomenclature and all
right,
of that
yeah.
kind of thing, you would not
But
call
I
a person
think
a
what
physician.
the other persons were on that particular Facebook discussion was querying is that for some of the other professions, you do have to sit some sort of entry qualification test,
Right, right.
a test. Then you have a governing body that sort of you know, supervises, and the public can sort of turn to in terms of if they feel in any way disenfranchised by actions of persons in the media. And yes, we study, but we don't have, like,
Right.
let's say, what is required, like, let's say, of medicine, of nurses, of
law.
teachers, of law, etc. And I think that was the argument. But you're absolutely right. Maybe that test is done as part of the knowledge that we acquire when we go to school.
Yeah, it was particularly disturbing to me that I called one particular media practitioner, you know, in the process of that and issuing this release, and the person did not think that this story was worth much. And my reaction was, you mean to tell me that this person is attacking media in general, of which you are part, and you see nothing wrong with that?
But
You
the
know-
fact is that the LPM issued a statement, the statement was responded to.
Right.
It
The
just doesn't
original
require-
statement was carried.
Right,
you know?
exactly, and that's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. I mean, it's not only a story in the sense that it's a follow-up, but it is also something that I do believe must always be given its attention to. Because I think too often people target the media, and I keep saying that at, you know, every opportunity I get, into believing that it is all right to sort of paint broadly the media in this position of being, you know, not only not objective but also being biased. And I know from research that this is not the case. All what the LPM has says is in the LPM's either thorough prudence mind or the on behalf of the LPM itself, that there is biasness in the media. I don't think research will support him at all on that.
Well, and what was interesting, in the same release, he's saying he's taken issue to, you know, DBS not carrying his statement in full. You know, as we said in the release, you know, it's like we should have some deference to the LPM's point of view. And, you know, there's nobody, there are media practitioners, there are media professionals all in, you just go in our society and you see media professionals. Everybody is a media expert. Everybody, and, you know, his grandmother is a media expert. You know, and it's kind of annoying to some extent, because whereas I welcome the criticism because we're not perfect and there's not everything that we would know. There are certain things that we do not know, and there are certain areas in which we can improve. But then, you know, to say that they know more than you do when you have gone through the requisite training to acquire that qualification, and what they base theirs on is just an observation. Because we are in the public eye so much, then people believe, okay, well, they know all about media.
Well, you know, I know Thurl personally, and I was disappointed that the statement should take that tone. And I was also disappointed at the fact that the statement, or one of his complaints, was that the statement was not read in its entirety. When one sits to consider a story and whether it should be included in a newscast or broadcast in a newspaper, there are several factors that one has to take into consideration. And one of the things is that there is nothing that says that just because a political party or politician issues a statement, that it has to be read in its entirety. You know,
or read at all.
Or read at all. And I think that we in the media, because it comes from a political entity or a political person, that we have sort of been sucked into the notion that it has to be given some sort of priority, even though what the politicians are or the political party is saying amounts to absolutely nothing or total garbage. You know, and we carry it because, I mean, politics is more or less ingrained in most of our DNAs, even though it's only by color. The fact is, it is not a necessity that a media house carries information simply because it's released by a political party.
Well, and it goes
and so
back.
I just want to say I was disappointed, and also the fact that you have mentioned that it targeted particular persons without a thorough, perhaps, investigation was, to me, I believe, a bit myopic on the part of the LPM and Mr. Prudent.
And irresponsible as well. And I mean, it just underscores our point in the association as well, that there is need for training, because those people who are there, who are now leading news organizations, they don't have a full understanding of what news is and what their responsibilities are. And the fact that as a fourth estate, we are the eye of the democracy. And if this eye is blurred, or if this eye is shut for some reason, then it opens the door to abuses. You understand? That is why we have to be very vigilant, and we have to be aware of those attacks, and we have to nip them in the bud and stem, you know, the advancement of those political parties, business interests, and others in the community who want to silence the media. You know, we have to be aware of that.
So
but it goes back
are
to
you
training.
prepared to say who was the person who did not?
Well, I mean, I will.
Or is it prudent not to say so?
Yeah, it's not prudent for me, but I mean, it would accomplish nothing, you know, for me to say who it was. You know, albeit, you know, we have to draw a line between a journalist, I always say a reporter, and a talk show host. You know, whereas a talk show host can be a journalist. I mean, it does not mean that, in fact, a journalist can be a talk show host. It does not mean that because you're a talk show host, you're a journalist. You understand? So we have to draw those lines, and we have to
from
train.
what you describe, I don't know who it is, but it is unfortunate that there wasn't that kind of support given, and you know, the follow-up that one expects, especially when an official entity of the media in St. Lucia, duly elected by, you know, persons who attended the general meeting, then it should be given some sort of priority. Yes.
My last point on that, with respect to the training, you know, we have learned the wrong things, and we perpetuate them. You know, the press release thing, for example. Once we get something on our faxes, we believe it's news and it has to go in, and that's not the case. You know, we need people to look at what's happening in the society, see what's important to our people in the society, see what's affecting them, and develop stories that would impact the society, so that they can get information and truths about various things that happen in the society that impacts their lives, especially as it relates to the government, because the government has the most power. The government has power over business and over every citizen, you know, in the country. So we have to be very cognizant of that, and also vigilant when it comes to these things.
I agree.
You're watching the Press Club. When we come back, we have a lot more news to discuss. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
So you're going